This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Tuesday, July 18th, 2023, and it is 5:01 p.m. First item is a roll call of members present. Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Mike Lawson.
Present.
Rich Feely.
Present.
Carrie LaFleur.
Present.
And Keith Bergman present. Okay, so we are all here. And we also have other folks with us on the call and may have others joining as well. So let me just repeat that I've got a hard stop of 6 p.m. For tonight's meeting. So in order to try to cover as many of our agenda items as possible by that time, I'd suggest that we do some quick things first. Hopefully approving the 5 sets of minutes can be done on short order. Then here briefly on MBTA community zoning, then some legislative updates, and then we could spend the balance of the time working on a proposed spending plan and to hear updates from our many housing partners. So with that, I'd first like to take up for approval the trust's minutes of our last regular meeting on June 13th, 2023. And I wonder if there's a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Rich. Is there any discussion on that? I think we were all, let me look at those minutes and just make sure. I think we were all, see who was present. We have everyone was there, so all 5 can vote. So on the motion to approve, let's take a roll call vote. Linda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Keith, aye. Thanks very much. Then we have, thanks to the efforts of Liz Rust for 2 sets and for Shannon in the select board's office for the other 2, we have 4 sets of minutes of housing roundtables at which the trust had a quorum. And I want to thank Liz and Shannon for preparing those minutes. We have the select board's minutes from Shannon, and I just made them look like ours and made sure the motions were right. And so we've got 4 sets. Not all of us were there at the meetings. I can offer that Linda, Mike, Rich, and I were at 2 of the meetings. And on March 9 and March 30 of 2022. I wonder if there might be a motion, but can I have a motion by Linda and second by Mike to approve those 2 sets of minutes?
Fine.
Second.
All right. And a motion and a second. Then let's take a roll call vote and on approval. Linda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
And Keith, aye, and Carrie was not in attendance, so I'll say that is an abstention. Thanks. Next, we have April 12th, 2023, at which Linda, Mike, oh, I beg your pardon. Carrie was at the August 30.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm confused. I've already got us confused because it was April 12th, 2023 and March 9th, 2022 that Linda, Mike, Rich, and I were present. So why don't we just go back and say that the motion that was made in the last round included April 12th, 2023, but not August 30, 2022. And that we'll amend it accordingly. Is that okay with Linda and Mike in the motion and the second?
Yeah.
Okay, then we will stay with that vote. Next, we have August 30, 2022. Linda, Mike, I'm sorry, we're back to April 12th, 2023. We have Linda, Mike, August 30, 2022, Linda, Mike, Kerry, and Keith. So that's the motion that we'll be up to now. Can I have a motion by a motion by Linda, second by Mike to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Linda,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Kerry,
Aye.
Keith. Aye, so that's 4-0. Lastly, and see, it's not that fast after all, to do 5 sets of minutes. June 7th, 2023, at which Linda, Mike, and Keith were present. So a motion by Linda, second by Mike to approve.
I just want to clarify, June
sure.
7th, June 7th and not June 27th.
Yes, the June 7th, 2023 Housing Roundtable.
Okay, good.
And in fact, Rich made the editorial correction that he wasn't at that meeting, so he couldn't have seconded the motion to adjourn. So he's good, but not that good. So thank you for that. So we've got a motion by Linda, second by Mike.
Second by me.
Okay, on the motion to approve June 7th, Linda,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and Keith. Aye, and so we have approved 5 sets of minutes tonight, and thank you all for bringing us up to date.
May I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Frequently, we refer to Assabet River Bluff, the trust contribution of the 650,000. We frequently refer to it as 5 housing units. I would like to make a request that going forward that we might be more specific about, towards 2 housing units, towards land for 2 housing unit and 2 housing units, and then land for 3 housing future housing units. I'd like to make some distinction there, because when we read it, it just says 650 for 5 housing units. And going forward, as we have additional expenses, that's going to be somewhat confusing.
It's one property though.
Yeah, and I would also say that the loan document that has been signed is for 5 units. And the trust insisted on that Assabet River Bluff property being for 5 units.
I'm not quarreling with what our expectation is in terms of 5 units. It reads, to someone who is not familiar with this,
Yeah.
the footnote and the shorthand that we use in the chart, etc., looks like we outright purchase 5 units for that amount.
Okay, I see that. Yeah, we purchased a property on which there must be 5 units, and right now 5 affordable units. Right now there are none. Right now there are no affordable units because nothing's been deed restricted. So I get the. I'll be happy to make sure that we're that when we discuss Assabet and that the land requires 5 affordable units, we can say of which at some point, especially when the property gets split, of which 2 will be on this portion, and 3 will be on the other portion.
So that I'm more comfortable with that in terms of that, that's referring to the final outcome when all is said and done in terms of the new building being completed and so forth. But in the meantime, we have the potential, we have immediate potential for 2 units and 3 to be built. So I may be the only one having a little bit of issue in terms of how we record this, but I'm trying to think about the future, not only for additional expenses towards this, but for a clear understanding.
Right. Well, the loan documents require only forgive the loan in the loan amount in as 1/5 of the loan amount upon recording of an affordable unit. So if only 2 get recorded, then we will expect the money back for the other 3.
Yeah, I recall that. And also for someone who gets into that level of detail, they will find that. All right, I've made my point. That's
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, and we will accept the challenge, and especially as we're going forward talking about an additional $1.5 million, which will just allow us to go after which is what will be needed to go after 3 of those 5, and so we can be more precise on that. Thanks, Linda. Next, I wanted to take up MBTA communities zoning, and Linda Miller, planning board chair, is on the call, and just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that there is another public workshop, which will be on Wednesday, July 26th at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom, about mapping and zoning, and would offer the floor if Linda wanted to say anything more about that. Okay.
No, thank you. And we hope everyone can join us. Thank you very much.
Good. Just as we like to show up at every meeting that you are that the planning board discusses MBTA zoning, whenever you show up at our meeting, we're going to be sure to mention it as well. So and just put a plug in. So thanks everyone for that. Next, I'm going to call on I'll call out of order Rich Feely to talk about some legislative updates which appear later in our agenda. We were looking at the LOHA Coalition is reviewing an alternative bill which is in the legislature filed by Cape and Islands Senator Julian Sear, and Rich has been participating in LOHA discussions about trying to develop a policy position, and so just give the floor to Rich to update us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental feeling is that this may move when the statewide bill by Senator Comfort and Representative Connolly may not, just because of the disastrous situation on the islands and Cape. The structure of the SUR bill is that if you want to get a transfer fee, you got to hit 4 of 7 points, some of which are zoning related, some of which are affordable housing related, meaning, have you committed funds do you have a CPA? Have you committed CPA funds? Do you have a short-term occupancy tax and are you using it, et cetera? And we've had some comments on that. I think if we do MBTA zoning, we're pretty good on the zoning side, except for the last point, which at the moment just refers to passing 40R zoning, which is smart growth zoning, I believe. The issue there is if your focus is the Cape and the islands, you're not dealing with the MBTA. And so I've been pushing to make that, if you pass and comply with the MBTA requirements, you are, in compliance with that last point. There's no hearing scheduled yet. The feedback's going to Senator Sears' staff, and I'll keep people posted further. There is a hearing on the permit fee, which would be a permit surcharge, our home rule petition, which would be an important source of funds for the trust. And it's taking written testimony only to the Joint Committee on Revenue, and it's due by the 25th. I'm writing a letter for the foundation. I'll share it with everybody else. I'm hoping that the select board and others, and Carrie, I apologize, I just sent the select board a notice of this, but not to you. But anyhow, I'll share that, and hopefully we in the trust and the other housing agencies will back it, because, you know, as everybody knows, the process which makes fewer and fewer homes affordable is one of making them larger or tearing them down and building new ones. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich. Liz and then Carrie.
Yeah, thank you. So this was an interesting proposal. When I looked at that, I wasn't sure. So it's nice to hear that Concord would meet 4 of those 7 items. That wasn't really clear to me when I read that, though.
We're not so sure if we do,
Yeah.
but and Rich thought we might, but hope that town staff might tell us
Yeah.
further.
I think with MBTA zoning, we have the auxiliary dwelling unit. I think we would have enough multifamily zoning. And, you know, it depends a bit on, and I think we'd meet the CPA item. So it depends a bit on.
I just don't think we meet the CPA item.
No, we don't, because we'd have
Let
to
me
be.
just go back into that.
Yeah.
One of the pushbacks from the coalition is, yeah, you can pass the CPA, but don't, you know, put any demands on that other than perhaps the 10% that's required. So we do have a CPA. I think we've done, and maybe Diane can update this, on average 20%. So I think if they go along with what LOHA is saying, what LOHA is saying is, look, we don't want to create a fight with a conservation and recreation interest. Yes, we should be asking towns to do this source of additional funding, but that's the reason I think if they went with what LOHA is saying, we'd meet the CPA requirement.
Right. Just to clarify that the language of Senator Sears' bill would need to be amended to address LOHA's concerns, which is adopting the CPA is fine. It's not as a fine requirement. It's not okay to require that it be a 3% surcharge. Concord just has a 1.5% surcharge, for example, nor is it okay to require that 50% of the CPA funds be spent on housing. And as Rich says, Concord has spent, you know, at least 20% in recent years. So that's the sort of feedback that Rich was able to give LOHA as they developed their policy statement. Carrie, did you want to speak?
Yeah, Keith, I actually have a question about the 40R zoning. So I'm familiar with 40R from work in a former community. What I'm not familiar with is whether or not Concord has ever looked at 40R. And if we haven't, should we be looking at a 40R overlay for the 300 Baker Ave property? Could we sort of double dip there, get credit for 40R overlay over that property, and it's potentially part of the MBTA community zoning area?
I think 40R and MBTA are probably mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and what we're trying
That
to
would be my
push,
sense.
again,
Yeah.
if I heard Rich correctly, that in lieu of 40R, is this right, Rich, that for those MBTA communities that are in compliance with that zoning, that would be a substitute for that might be a substitute for the 40R.
That's what we're requesting. And I think, you know, that will get to the discussion with Senator Sears' office. And Senator Sears' staff have indicated, look, you know, we're getting pushed to say you got to show that you've made some commitment to housing. But I think there will be no problem with his staff in amending it to say 40R or MBTA.
Right.
And
Okay.
I told them, I said, look, if we do MBTA, we can't come back for another large rezoning. We'll get thrown out of town meeting.
Right.
Well, should we be looking at 40R? I mean, my understanding of 40R is there's the additional Chapter 70 funding for additional education expenses. And is that something we should be encouraging a quick look at to see if there's something that might be suitable for a 40R overlay.
My answer to that would be, in general, sure, why not take a quick look at it and see if it's something that we want to pursue, as just whether it's to meet the requirements that may occur under this bill, or maybe just something that we'd want to do for on our own. I think it would be good to understand whether it's a real option for us or not. I guess that's what
it's a town meeting process. So the planning board would take this up and bring it to town meeting in the spring.
Right.
If you went the 40R route.
Well, just let me chime in to say, unless there's some real urgency around this 40R, we've never done it before in town that I can recall anyway. And I would hate to see it start getting folks confused between the current overlay and this 40R.
right.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike.
Yeah, I agree with that. If we were gonna have this, ask the planning board to do it, we would ask them to do it after they've completed MBTA community zoning.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
good points.
right. Well, thank you for the questions, Rich. Thanks for the update. Any further points about legislation? The only thing I wanted to suggest is that since we now are aware that there's a hearing a week from today, albeit by written testimony only, Rich, would you care to move that the trust vote to send a letter in support of, and the bill is H 2797 to the Joint Committee on Revenue for its July 25th hearing?
Yes, I would vote that, and I will provide a draft within the next 24 hours.
Thanks
Which
so
would
much.
be what the foundation's sending, and then I would certainly be happy to have Keith modify that and submit it.
Thank you. So there's a motion. Linda, do you have your second?
She's muted, I'll second it.
Okay. And that's, again, is the home rule petition for a building permit surcharge that we'll say it, we'll take another vote at a later date on when a hearing is scheduled on our other petition. But why don't we go ahead and take a roll call vote on that motion? Linda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Keith? Aye, 5-0. Thanks very much. Thank you for that. And we were able to cover that business in 24 minutes. So we've got the rest of our meeting to talk about what I'm sure is a main event. And I want to put up on the screen. I'm going to share a document on the screen. Can you all see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Excuse me.
We've been having discussions for some time now about trying to reach a consensus or trying to have our Concord Housing Roundtable partners reach a consensus, all 7 groups, on what the priorities for our limited available funding for affordable housing that we have on hand. And so to put all of those things together, I've prepared this worksheet, which I hope can be a framework for discussion. It's been circulated prior to this meeting. I've shared it with our housing partners as well. And I want to thank the various boards and staff for getting some of the information that we need to fill in the blanks here. We're still some other things I think that we'd want to have for a total picture. But in general, let's say that at our last trust meeting, it was suggested that the trust itself might want to go through an exercise of making recommendations or coming up with its own set of priorities on how the funds might be spent. And when I say the funds, up till now, we've spoken in terms of the $3,123,000 in the trust fund. But we've also discussed being mindful of what other funding could be spent on housing in Concord, both this year and in future years. And so I've prepared a box at the bottom left where it called sources of funding, indicate what's available this year, which is the trust's current balance, as well as some columns of what might be available in future years. At some point we can, yes, that is thunder. But it's not a tornado, or at least I don't think it was, because my phone didn't shriek.
Raining.
But
No tornado warning.
very good. True. And so other things that we might want to fill in for a total picture of what funds are available might be the CPA Community Housing Reserve, which I understand from Megan was zeroed out at the at town meeting. That if that's the case, all of the funds that have been transferred to reserve were then transferred out to the trust. So that's great, and that there may be nothing in.
That is true, Keith.
Okay, that's great. Then another category of what we might all 7 of our roundtable partners might want to have is what's a good target? What will a target be for annual appropriations for housing under the Community Preservation Act? And that I'm sure that's a discussion that will be coming up at the Community Preservation Committee. Be happy to attend those meetings as well, and to see what goals are. One thought was, however, that if you look back historically, according to the CPC's annual reports, it's been between 21 and 22% of the total CPA funds that have come in over the life of the Act in Concord that have gone towards housing. So maybe, just maybe, a target for planning a budget to implement the production priorities in the housing production plan might be to see what number we can get the CPC to agree to, let's say, earmark at least. It's not it's for budgeting purposes. But just if the total amount of CPA funds were to be $2 million in the upcoming funding round, then you might see a somewhere like 420,000 or something like that as might be 21%, which, by the way, is actually less than what the CPC approved for this year, which was over 500,000 because of funds that went for housing. Just a long way of saying, I think for our budget planning purposes, it might be well to have the housing partners engage with CPC and see if there's a comfort level that's higher than the minimum 10% that we at least could try to target for available funds. And I don't know if Diane has any thoughts about that, or maybe some advice on what would be the best way for us to broach such an idea with the CPC.
Hi, Keith. We meet this evening, and if there is a moment in the agenda, I will bring this up and ask that we put it on our agenda for the following week, because it's not presently on the agenda, but I shall bring it up if that's okay.
That's great. That would be great. I appreciate it very much. And part of it is that I think that the bigger picture might be that some of the feedback we were hearing from some other partners at our last trust meeting was that as much as the trust has said, we'd like to have a plan, we'd like to know by this, by the Housing Roundtable, which is going to be held in August. And by the way, do we have a date yet? Is there, is it Wednesday, August 14th, or have we finalized a
I have
date?
been unable to get planning board or CPC responses, so I think I'm just going to schedule away. There's a little bit of a, aside from those two groups,
Okay.
Carrie and Lee are not available on the same day. So Lee is only available on Monday, the 14th, and Carrie on Wednesday, the 16th. So I think I was going to go with Lee needing to be there as the chair of the CHDC, but I just,
Yeah, I
so
think you need.
those are the open items, right?
The
Yeah.
CPC meets on the 15th, for what it's worth.
Well,
August-
this is, the dates are the 14th and the 16th, and I sent a couple of notes to Burton and I've not heard back.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll bring it up tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, it would be great if we can agree on a date, and it's an off week for the select board. That's why that Monday is
Yeah.
offered.
Perfect.
Henry was available on either Monday or Wednesday, I think.
I'll see what I can do to rearrange my calendar. Since it was an off Monday, I had something else fun scheduled, but
Oh, okay.
I'll see what I can do.
You're not allowed to have fun. What do you think?
Not off Monday. You mean like a long weekend? Woo.
Yes.
Never heard of a town manager planning, but
You've got decades to go before you can do that. So great. Well, thank you all. But anyway, to get back, if our goal is to present a plan to the for the Housing Roundtable partners to consider, I thought it would be well to try to assemble as much information as we can and a handy reference. And it seemed to me that perhaps the best way to sort the projects that we might consider is by housing production plan strategy. So that's what this does. We're basically in this business to implement the housing production plan and its including its housing production strategies, which include Assabet, Junction Village, other lands to create units, units in private developments, housing authority, and services for seniors and low income residents. So all of the things that, so this is, I'm not sure if it's an exhausted list, but pretty close to projects that are on our radar screen from things that we've heard. Diane.
Thank you. I just wonder, I don't see on this, and maybe it's right there and I just don't see it, but the Novo, I see it on the agenda coming up, but the Novo Riverside Commons, a quarter of that, right? Or 50,
Yeah.
20% is to be SHI housing.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if it's in.
It is. It's under item 3, goal 3. It is 300 to 310 Baker Ave. 40.
Thank you. I didn't recognize those addresses. I have 294, 297 or something.
Right. Okay, thank you. And Stephanie. Oh,
Hi, yeah, I just was curious. Are you walking through the criteria now, your project selection criteria?
no, I'm not. Not
Okay.
yet. No,
All
that
right,
was,
I'll hold my comments until then.
okay, thanks very much. Yeah,
Yeah.
that will come soon. What
Okay.
or next, I'll say. But what I had, in fact, what I will even want to do, Diane, is your hand still up or you just haven't? Okay, now, thanks. I do want to go back to the, I jumped off of sources of funding before I was finished, but the trust fund balance, community preservation, we've touched on. Other questions that we want to ask, are there any ARPA funds that could be spent for any of the things that we might do to implement housing, the production projects, or there are other town funds, or are there state grant opportunities? We don't have to answer all of those questions tonight with the numbers, but I think our hope would be that if there are figures that we could plug into this to this matrix, it would be helpful to know, because if at the end of the day, the pot, the kitty that we're drawing from is bigger, if it's not just 3.1 million, but let's say if it's somehow closer to 4 million, that would be good to know. There might be different decisions that are made or priorities that are made depending upon the availability of total funds. So that's the point that I wanted to make there. Going back to the other, to the top of this worksheet, I've included projects that have already been funded, as well as projects for which there would need to be funding. And I've separated them. The one, if it has a check mark next to it, it's already been funded, like Assabet River Bluff, the acquisition of land, or the rehab of the.
Yeah, can I just, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say, to clarify, it's not rehab of 2 units. It's really, we're going to call that like maybe a phase 1 funding. Rehab's not a CPA eligible
All right.
activity, and it's
Okay.
much more than funds for the 2 units.
Okay,
So
so
just call it phase 1 funding.
okay, so development phase 1. Phase 1.
I would call it phase 1 funding, not development phase 1, but.
Oh, phase 1. Well, I'd call it phase 2 because phase 1 was the land.
Okay, phase 2 funding, then you could do that.
Phase 2 funding, and
Okay.
then phase 3
Develop-
funding.
Wait, you could, yeah, that's fine, or develop 3 units, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, sorry to take up extra time.
Very good, thank you. Junction Village, heard today from Liz and Lee that there's a request for $50,000 in pre-development expenses. As we've talked about, I should probably put a blank line with other underneath it to be filled in later, because we know that at some point additional funding will be needed to have the project go forward, although we don't know that now, and it may be some time before we know what additional funds are needed as a subsidy. So so we've got that there. Then under other land to create SHI units, there's an old project comparatively that was undertaken a few years ago for 930 Main Street. And the new projects are, we've identified 3 potential ones. First is the funding for the 40B at 310 Baker Ave. Another is the surplus state property at 91B Main Street. And a third suggested by Liz was that the trust, for its own sake, might want to budget funds that we could grant award for feasibility specific sites that may come up. So those are some categories. As we've discussed before, the 40B could be that I felt awkward about putting the figure 1.5 million in this column, even if it's just a worksheet. But we're aware that from Carrie's report to us last time that the developer is keenly interested in the sewer connection fee, which the town's fee structure would place at about $1.5 million. And as I think we've talked about before, in some communities, it's even the policy to waive fees for affordable projects. But you can't, it's difficult, but you can't, I would just say, you cannot waive a sewer fee for a project where the town is not subsidizing the sewer. If the costs are being borne by the users, including the town as a user, it's not appropriate to expect those users to be bearing the financial effect of a lost 1.5 million in revenue. So if that's to be done, if any portion of that is to be covered, it would need to come from the town by making a contribution to the sewer fund. And I happened to see Chris Clutchman of DHC, of what used to be known DHCD. I've been working there for a while. It was a Peter Lowett's retirement function on Friday night, and had a long conversation with her about things like this. And it's not unusual for towns to waive fees when they can, but if you can't, then the way you address, in lieu of the waiver, that the town can put money aside for the project. And I will just say, from my experience in Littleton, if the town, if the desire were that town funds from the trust or elsewhere, or ARPA or whatever, be made available for the project, then that funding could certainly be wrapped up in a grant agreement that contained whatever reasonable conditions rather the town wanted to place on them. So that would give, I think, some leverage for negotiations. None of that has to get resolved, but we just want to make sure that it's on our radar screen. Any comments on the 40B before I move on to the next item? Didn't know if there was any late breaking updates or anything else. Okay.
But I just want to clarify that you're saying that would be funded though from the town, not from the trust, but that
No.
you're just bringing it to the attention here.
No, I'm saying that I would say that if the trust has money, well, I'll give my own personal opinion. 30,000 per unit is pretty neat. If that's if the subsidy of giving 1.5 million to produce 50 affordable units, if I got my math corrected. Maybe I missed the math, but I think every due consideration should be given to seeing if there's an appropriate role for the trust to play in helping to make sure that this project comes about with as many affordable units as possible, with whatever reasonable conditions the town would want to see attached to that. So I think that's something that we should want to fully explore. The properties listed in the housing production plan, it's not a surprise. And so anyway, I guess that's where it is. I think the trust should be part of any conversations that the town might have at some point about how the funds, about what funds the town might want to have the developer have, because we are a potential source of funding for that. Okay, on the surplus state property at 91B Main Street, we've got there are appraisals in the 600,000s of what that 1.45 acres might be worth. That MassDOT has to sell it for at market value unless the Federal Housing Administration lets them sell it for less, and hopefully that might happen for affordable housing. Kerry updated us at the last meeting that that's something that the town's going to pursue with the legislative delegation to see if there's an opportunity to acquire the property for less than market value. And the trust has taken the position that we, if less than or no consideration would be great if the property hooks up to sewer. So, but we don't have a number that I think we can put in to this grid with any high level of confidence yet. But we ought to plan to come back to that. Next category of strategy number 4, the private developments. We've spent money in the past to do buy downs, and we may want to do it again. So we ought to think about what or whether there's an amount of funding we'd want to put aside. The Housing Authority up till now has indicated it does not have a funding request. They're looking at implementing their they're looking at getting many of their units listed on this subsidized housing inventory through the project-based voucher program, for which at this point they would not require additional town funding. Happy to keep that, keep the dialogue open with the Housing Authority. The last category listed here is under strategy 14, services for seniors and low income. The CHDC small grant program, there was a big mention of that in the housing production plan, that that program was about to run out of money, and that the need to fund it was important. That's sort of what was the main focus of that strategy. And so the CHDC has given us a placeholder of $50,000 to fund 2 years worth of programs, and appreciate having that. Also, just yesterday, we got a request from the town, the community services coordinator, with a request for a $50,000 rental assistance program, which I think we should take a look at as our deliberations go forward. I'll say that unlike the small grant program for CHDC, there's no specific mention of a rental assistance program in the housing production plan, but subject program certainly fits within the scope of providing services to seniors and low income. So I think we can certainly consider that. And at that point, I guess maybe I just take a step back and see and ask the group what's missing from that list that we just went through. What things that we've talked about are the priorities we've missed? Because again, we can't do everything, but of the things that are on that we want to have on our radar screen of how to spend our 3 million and plan to spend other funds that might be available. Any comments on projects that are listed here? And they're not in a priority order. They're ranked in order of the number of their housing strategy. Stephanie.
Yes, hi. I did tee this up at the last Housing Authority board meeting, asking about potential requests from CHA. And we talked a little bit about the possibility of working with the trust to go in on purchasing a property together. There wasn't a lot of specific discussion about where. I think Rick Eifler is pulling together some information that he wants to present at the next roundtable. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, Keith.
Great, thanks very much. That's appreciate that a lot. We want everyone to have their thinking caps on here and have our full attention. Thank you. Let's see, and so I guess what my thought was that as we look at what as we at some point try to I think once we get fuller numbers, so we can see more of a complete list of things we might do or want to do, that when, okay, I've got, I see Rich and then Carrie.
Yeah, I just want to sort of second what Stephanie's saying. I think we should really focus on how to increase supply of affordable units rather than using our money every year to support demand. That doesn't mean that we don't want to make housing affordable at very low income levels. But the problem in this town is that there's not much that even with subsidy is near to affordable. So I strongly favor, for instance, what Stephanie says, maybe going in with them to buy a property that would be used on a project-based voucher or run directly by the authority, rather than simply running our own Section 8 program, if you will.
Thanks. Thanks, Rich. Stephanie,
Yeah, just a quick comment there. I actually agree with that. And I think the trick is, to what extent is to what extent is the trust driving the agenda of where, of the strategy in terms of where these properties will be or how funding is used, versus the sponsor of the proposal coming to you and asking you for assistance. You know what I mean by the difference? Is sort of the push and pull. And you guys will have the funding and want to kick the tires on a proposal, but you also want to make doggone sure that the sponsors and the folks that are requesting the dollars know exactly what that means and how the proposal will be and the project will essentially be implemented. And that's why, for me, that, again, to agree with Rich, it's the partnership piece is important. Who owns the project with your, fiduciary assistance, but making sure that the folks who own the project can see it to fruition.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I appreciate that comment and agree with it, that the whoever the sponsor is it plays an important lead role in bringing it forward. I guess I view the trust as we're sort of the lead group to make sure everyone is brought together at the table to figure out what the plan is. And
we're driven by the production plan. I mean,
right.
As you clearly outlined on this worksheet, the very left
Right.
column.
Thank you. Carrie.
So two things. I wonder if there's an opportunity to partner with CHA on the 91B Main Street property, and if that would make a stronger case with any of the players at the state. So that's just to throw out that we could ask about that. And the second is, Keith, I don't know, did you mention the Staffordshire property project? Is that just completely off the table, or did I just blank when you talked about it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. The
CHA.
Yeah, the CHA property that we actually formally took it off the table until the CHA brings it back.
Okay.
It didn't.
All right. Thank you.
And it didn't look like you were going to be in. I watched the planning board meeting last week where they were discussing an adjacent property that's proposed to be subdivided, and there were all the players from Staffordshire, and didn't seem to be any closer to agreement on what's the best for the future of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. Excellent suggestion to consider the 91B Main Street as explore whether that could be a partnership with the Housing Authority. Maybe it would be easier to get the property from the state at a reduced cost if it were if that were part of it. But that I'd say one way or another, whether it's a Housing Authority or otherwise, I think we'd want to try to pursue that property. So thank you, and happy to stay in touch with all of our partners as this goes forward. And then the last box that I wanted to review, and we're coming up, we've got 5 minutes left in the meeting. And so this will be the briefing of how do we start, and we'll schedule our next meeting to maybe start to go through some of these. But I wanted to take a stab at least of putting on one sheet a summary of potential selection criteria that we would all want to have front and center. Listing in the housing production plan is I think, for me, that's a sine qua non, that's what we're here to do. If others feel a different way, let's talk about it. I think our priority has been doggedly focused on adding units to the subsidized housing inventory. There's some appreciation, need to appreciate whether we're leveraging non-town funding, which there might be, opportunities to do. If it's on property that the town either owns or that has it required, and therefore to some degree there's a sunk cost that the property exists one way or another. It's on the, it's available for housing. That is something we may want to consider. The availability of sewer is another is another potential criteria. Not that properties that don't have sewer wouldn't be considered, but rather that it would if you could get a higher density, then sewer availability might score higher. And then as would perhaps if it were appropriate to offer deeper affordability where that was seen as a goal. Other times the affordability target, especially once we're safely above 10%, might be to look at the missing middle. Look at workforce housing. So plenty of things that we could do. So I am wondering if there's any just initial reaction to any of this information that's been presented here and suggestions you'd make for what information you'd like by the time we bring it back again. Stephanie.
I just wanted to mention to you, I'm going to drop you an email, Keith, so we don't have to I don't have to list the things. We don't have time, but I'll send you a note.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see all of you on my screen. Okay, Rich.
Yeah, I think this list is good. I think we need to have a discussion about the deeper affordability. In other words, particularly if we can get some 60% units through 40B or something like that, I'm somewhat reluctant to buy say a 100% unit down to 60% rather than putting money into an additional unit. So for future discussion, but I think that has to be tempered by the fact that, we've long since lost most housing that's affordable at AMI.
Thank you. Let me just call on our board members, see if they have any comments. Linda? And then Mike?
Just a quick one. I think this is great, Keith. As we think about going forward, we could use this as a template to sort of add columns. For example, project amount is your one column, previous funding, then we might add a column that talks about non-trust funding.
Mm-hmm.
So we could keep track of, as the CPC does on a lot of theirs, they're very interested in matching funds as a criterion for their continuing support. So I think this is a great template. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Linda? Did you have...
Yes, also, thank you for doing this. And I assume the proposal that came in today is not reflected on here, so this will be updated as we go along.
Well, the town rental assistance is here under 14, under item 14, town rental assistance 50,000, and all of the trusts, the CHDCs are listed here as to date are listed here as well.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, but I certainly want to, as we get more information on, on what a ballpark for the surplus state property might reasonably be, even if it just is a negotiating position, do we think, if it's worth 600, that we don't want to go more than 300,000, just, some kind of policy direction, or if 1.5 million for sewer is thought by the town to be too much to to think about, should we earmark a lower number? Just for discussion purposes, not subject to negotiation.
And we also, as you pointed out earlier, it would be helpful to know if there are other known sources of funding at this point, would be very helpful.
Very good. Okay, well, we've come to the hour that I need to depart, but I wanted to get all of this information together so we could get it out there, think about it. And I'm going to suggest that we have a motion to adjourn this meeting because I've got to go, but I will be in touch afterwards to figure out what our next meeting is. I would suggest we probably want to meet prior to, if it's the 14th or 16th of August that the next roundtable is, we should meet before then. And okay, if I'm back in touch with you about picking a date. Very good. Could I have a motion to adjourn
Move to adjourn.
from Mike,
Second.
second by Rich? On that motion, roll call vote. Linda, Mike,
Aye.
Rich,
And I'll try and take Mike's suggestion and incorporate the thing I did earlier into yours, where we look at sources of funds. So,
thanks very
Right.
much. Carrie
Aye.
and Keith, aye. Thank you all very much. Take care.
Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
thanks. Good night.